I have to admit, when I first looked at Little Disasters, I thought it had been engineered in a lab for the true crime crowd. You know the formula: affluent families in immaculate homes, mothers with complicated marriages, a possible crime involving a child, and that glossy, perfumed aesthetic that practically screams prestige drama. On paper, it feels like the perfect storm. But as I watched, I kept thinking that maybe it's less a storm and more a carefully arranged display. Impressive to look at, not always convincing to experience. Adapted from the novel by Sarah Vaughan and brought to the screen by creator Ruth Fowler, the series presents itself like a curated blend of other successful shows. And maybe I'm wrong, but to me it often feels exactly like that. A mix and match of familiar ingredients that should work beautifully together, yet somehow don't always blend. Still, I can't deny the premise pulled me in. Jess, played by Diane Kruger, is awakened in the middle of the night by her husband Ed. Their 10-month-old daughter, Betsy, is crying more than usual. Jess takes her to the emergency room, where she's seen by Liz, the on-call pediatrician, who also happens to be her close friend. And then comes the twist. Liz discovers Betsy has a skull fracture. Jess has no clear explanation. She looks nervous. Liz makes the call to social services. That moment, that phone call, is the spark. And I think that's where the series is at its strongest. The idea that a friendship could fracture under professional duty, that maternal instinct could collide with suspicion, that one decision could unravel an entire social circle, it's gripping. Liz insists it's her duty as a doctor. But from there, everything spirals. What unfolds is a two-track narrative. On one side, there's the investigation into what happened to Betsy, centering on Jess and Ed. On the other, we move into the past, back to a prenatal class where Jess, Liz, and their circle first met more than a decade ago. That group includes Charlotte, a high-powered lawyer married to Andrew; Mel, more middle class, with her eccentric husband Rob; and Liz's husband Nick. It's a web of relationships layered with jealousy, class tension, anti-vaccine arguments, possible affairs, and the ever-present strain of modern motherhood. I think the show wants to explore false appearances, the myth of the perfect mother, the fragility beneath curated lives, the unsettling possibility of parental violence. But to me, it often feels like those themes are used more as fuel for suspense than as ideas to genuinely interrogate. The series leans so heavily into its thriller identity that at times it feels like the cast knows they're in a crime drama and performs accordingly. People don't just look at each other, they stare. Even a glass of water seems suspicious. And then there's Diane Kruger's performance. I've always thought of her as a subtle, refined actor, especially remembering her in Inglourious Basterds. But here, I couldn't help feeling she was playing the perfect woman archetype to such an extreme that it borders on parody. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I kept wondering if she was channeling Nicole Kidman at her most icy and inscrutable. The expression she wears in the promotional image? To me, it barely changes across all 6 episodes. Visually, the show has what I'd call the IKEA catalog thriller aesthetic. Directed by Eva Sigurdardottir, every scene is polished, symmetrical, and immaculate. Even when things turn dark, Jess can collapse in despair and somehow land in a pose worthy of a poster shoot. Nothing ever seems truly messy, and I found myself wishing for a little more emotional disorder to match the supposed chaos. Ironically, the most grounded character for me is Liz. She feels recognizably human, anxious, conflicted, carrying the weight of responsibility. Yet even here, the series leans hard into the idea that no one is what they seem. Anyone could be guilty, or at least look guilty. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Little Disasters isn't about discovering the truth so much as sustaining suspicion. I just kept thinking that beneath all the gloss and genre tropes, there was a sharper, more unsettling story waiting to break through, one that didn't need to look perfect to feel powerful.